Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to another edition of the Grueling Truths Tuesday Night Boxing Show. As always, I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. My co-host, Joe Rodriguez, couldn't make it in tonight. He had some work commitments at the studio. He's actually putting together new music for our show. Tonight, we have another great show. One of the most respected trainers in boxing tonight is with us. He also fought twice for the light heavyweight championship of the world. Help me welcome to the Grueling Truth, John the Iceman Scully. You there, John?
Yes, sir. I hear you. How you doing?
All right. Let's just start from the beginning. What age and when did you start boxing?
Basically, I was about, when I got interested in it, I was about 10 when my father actually had books in his apartment. My mother and father were divorced, so I used to stay with my father on the weekends. And to kill time, keep myself busy, I used to read his books. And he had a lot of books. He had books on the mafia. He had books on Helter Skelter, Frank Sinatra. And he also had 3 boxing books, one of which was Muhammad Ali's autobiography, which kind of caught me, just because the movie The Greatest had come out around that time, and Ali was fighting. And I remember Ali fighting Jimmy Young on free TV, ABC Wide World of Sports. And so I started reading the book and kind of got caught up in the book and just gained a love for boxing. And actually, one thing that really helped at the time, and actually it's coming back now, is the network TV fights. My father and I started watching the fights together on the weekends, and so by the time I was 12 or 13, I knew Sean O'Grady and Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Pepino Cuevas. I knew all the contenders. I knew who all the champions were, and everything just kind of blossomed from there.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar. It's pretty much, I think we're about the same age. I grew up about the same time, and heck, I remember when you could watch 3 championship fights on ABC on a Friday night, including Leonard Benitez, and I think Larry Holmes fought on that undercard. And I love what they're doing now. There's a lot more boxing on than what there has been in a long time.
Right.
I know you had a highly decorated amateur career. What were some of your most memorable moments as an amateur boxer?
To be honest, for me, most of the great events came at the nationals. All the back, you have a local level, and then the local boxers come out of that to go to a regional level, and then whoever comes out of that goes to the national level. And so when you get to the nationals, you're basically representing your region against all the other regions in the United States. And that's where, I got to interact with, I saw Roy Jones when he weighed 139 pounds. I saw Chris Bird when he weighed 139 pounds. I saw Michael Moore when he weighed 156. So I was from that era. And, being at the Nationals and seeing Roy Jones for the first time, and Kevin Kelly, and, Vernon Forrest, Sean Babe Mitchell, Gerald McClellan. I actually saw Roy Jones and Gerald McClellan fight live in Omaha, Nebraska in 1988 against each other. So those were, just being at the Nationals and being among that group was, probably the most exciting and interesting time of my whole life in boxing and out of boxing. So that was the era that I really reflect on, and that was my era, the 80s, and fighting against. I fought some guys. The world-ranked amateurs and pros. Future pros like. I fought Otis Grant. I fought Lamar Kidfire Parks. I fought Darren Allen. Quite a few guys. Joe Lipsy. Several national champions, and it was just a powerhouse era and a great era to be an amateur.
Yeah, amateur boxing today, I think, is nowhere near what it used to be. What do you think are some of the differences between amateur boxing today as compared to when you were fighting as an amateur?
Well, the competition isn't as deep, and I'll tell you. I mean, the reason being, I think, there's less kids boxing now. That's just the way, it's just the way it is. It goes, it has its ups and downs. I gauge it like this, like in the New York City Golden Gloves back in the early 80s, a guy would have to fight 5 times at least to win just the New York City Golden Gloves, whereas now you could fight once or maybe twice. When I first started as an amateur, my first year in the Golden Gloves was 1984, and I remember this is the local Golden Gloves, and there were 16 guys in my weight class. Now, in this era, in the same tournament, you wouldn't have more than 2 or 3 in the same weight class. So it's just a fact that less kids are boxing now, that the numbers have dropped drastically. So I think that's created obviously a problem, and that's probably why, as it trickles down, we've had less and less gold medalists. I mean, we haven't had a gold medalist in the Olympics for quite a while, and it's just there's less boxers to choose from. There's not necessarily that there aren't good fighters today. It's just that there's a lot less of them.
Well, I think a lot of that, I don't know what your opinion on that is, but I think a lot of that reason comes from what you just talked about with no free TV boxing. I think that has a lot to do with it, plus just the NFL taking off so much. I mean, everybody talks about where's the next American heavyweight champion. He's probably playing tight end in the NFL right now.
Well, I'll tell you this. Here's the thing. This is what I was hoping that Pacquiao and Mayweather fight would draw interest among kids, because I came up after the era of, I was lucky because I was a kid and boxing thrived because there's several different things, and they all happened within a span of about 7 years. You had Muhammad Ali against Joe Frazier and then Thriller Miller, and you had him against Leon Spinks in the return match, and you had him against Larry Holmes. You had Sugar Ray Leonard and Howard Davis in the Olympics in '76, and then they came up, and Ray became the new Muhammad Ali. You had the Rocky movie, which came out, which probably did more for boxing than both of those things. Rocky came out. So, and in 1980, you had Sugar Ray Leonard and his son in the 7-Up commercial, which was a huge hit. Again, the Rocky movies, the first 3 of them, from 1976 to 1983, you had 3 blockbuster movies. And, it's like Rocky. People, they laugh at it that Sylvester got in the Hall of Fame, but you have to realize, I mean, what influence that movie had on that era of fighters. I can remember going to see Rocky III, and in the theater, and I went out to get some popcorn, and I remember that one of the fight scenes started, and I rushed back into the theater, and it was literally like a real fight was going on. Like the audience. Yeah. It was like you were in a World Heavyweight Championship arena watching the World Championship, and it was Rocky and Clubber Lang fighting each other. I mean, that was the impact that those movies had. So in a span of 8, 9, 10 years there, we had Leonard, we had Ali, we had Larry Holmes, we had fights on network TV, we had 3 different Rocky movies, we had the Olympics. I mean, it was just it was just unbelievable. It was unbelievable the influence that boxing had on American culture back then, and that's gone. Now everybody's getting excited about the new boxing series on network TV, but we had that. That's nothing. Like, we had that every weekend. You could fight. You could watch. I mean, there were certain fighters, if you remember. Like, for example, Sugar Ray Leonard was an ABC fighter. He was on the ABC network. On CBS, you had Donald Curry. On NBC, you had Hagler. So all 3 networks had a group of fighters. On CBS, you had Robin Blake, and you had Boom Boom Mancini, who I think was on there. You had Vinny Pazienza, who was on NBC all the time. When Roy Jones first turned pro, his second pro fight was on NBC, undercard of a Pazienza fight. So now, what we have now with network TV, that was every weekend back then. There was nothing to see a fight, a world championship. To see Tommy Hearns, Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard, Larry Holmes on network TV was nothing. It was a casual, everyday thing. Now you get a world champion on there, it would be, like a pay-per-view fight. So, I was lucky. Timing is everything, and I came up in an era where I had exposure to it that kids today don't have.
Yeah, I could tell you this. My sons, they watch football with me every Sunday, but it wasn't like me and my dad, where I watch a boxing match, HBO at night. And number one, there's a decent chance they're going to be asleep. But the thing that really bothered me about Mayweather-Pacquiao is the fight actually turned out the way I was dreading, but, that's one of them things where my head told me to be one thing and my heart told me another. But they come in, they had a baseball game that night, all their friends come over. I got 8 kids between the ages of 12 and 14, all jacked up to watch this fight. And by the 5th or 6th round, I got kids saying, why are we even watching this? And they're going home. And
the
thing is this. The ones that were left, though, I threw Hagler and Hearns on for before they went home.
Or Gaddy Ward. You have to show them Lyle and Form. You got to back it up. You got to say, well, listen, it could have happened this way, and you show them, you can show them Lyle and Foreman, just some of the great fights in history. And on the one hand, Pacquiao and Mayweather, like, I'm all for a guy. As a trainer, I would have had Mayweather fight as he did. You got to fight the best possible plan. But with the hype of that fight and the way they hyped it and the way they, manipulated the money and they got the money, they should have put more, a little more risk. I mean that's one thing you could say about different eras. You take a guy like Tommy Hearns. One thing you knew, when Tommy Hearns was going to fight, you were going to see brilliant skill, but you're also going to see a guy who put it on the line. Like, he went for it, even when he didn't have to. Like, Tommy Hearns went for the knockout. He gave you what you wanted to see. And Sugar Ray Leonard, people know Sugar Ray kind of as a pretty boy. That's his image. But people that really know boxing, Sugar Ray Leonard was a killer. Sugar Ray Leonard was just as mean and nasty as a Jake LaMotta or any one of those guys. Sugar Ray.
Yeah, and I still
Sugar
think
Ray Leonard, he went for the knockout.
I still think his first fight with Duran is what made him huge, because he walked out and he stood man-to-man with Duran, and that's a one-point fight.
That's what I'm saying. That was like a Duran. The Duran-Leonard one was like a Mayweather-Pacquiao. Like, it could have went easily like a Mayweather-Pacquiao fight, but Ray chose to fight, fan-friendly. He made it a great fight. That's an unsung fight a lot of times. I think that the rematch has overshadowed that fight, and people forget about it because of the rematch. But the first Leonard-Duran fight was easily one of the greatest fights of all time, and that's because Ray chose to fight as he did.
Yeah, Ray, to me, I thought that he was basically somebody at that age. I was only 11 years old. I couldn't stand him. I thought he was just basically a media creation. But when you watch that man stand there, toe-to-toe with Roberto Duran, and I had the fight scored, I think, 8 rounds to 7, but I could see how you could have had it 8-7 Leonard even. It was that close of a fight, and I think people really forget that.
Right, and not just that, but one thing, I'll tell you something. And look, Mayweather's a great fighter. I take nothing from that guy. That guy's skill. The guy's skill. The guy's the man. I'm not downing him in any way. But I'll just say this. It's a mentality, and his mentality is successful. But I'm just talking about from a fan's perspective. If you could look at Mayweather, and you could look at pictures of him, and you could look at the actual video. Like, when he gets under fire, if he's in the corner, if he's on the ropes, and they're throwing, a big puncher's throwing big shots at him, and I'm not knocking him necessarily, but, he gets a look on his face almost like panic. You know what I mean? Like, I got to get out of the way. I got to be defensive. And I relate to that. I don't want to get hit either. But Sugar Ray Leonard, again, for being a pretty boy, Sugar Ray Leonard was a killer. You watch Sugar Ray Leonard fight off the ropes against Hagler. You watch him do it against Duran. You watch him when he's hurt and he's got the closed eye against Hearns. Every image I have of Sugar Ray Leonard is Sugar Ray Leonard with the look of the devil on his face, biting down on his mouthpiece, going for vicious knockouts. Like, Sugar Ray Leonard dug down like a killer. And people need to realize that Ray Leonard was not the pretty boy that he unjustly gets the image of in a lot of people's minds. Ray Leonard was a true fighter, and that's what I think really in the nutshell, that's what people are missing from Mayweather. That's what they want to see from him. They want to see that Sugar Ray Leonard dig down and really get it done. And, again, it's hard to knock him because he's so successful and he doesn't get touched. And it's hard to tell a guy, hey, you should get hit more. You should take more abuse. It's kind of an oxymoron. It's kind of silly, but that's what people want to see. They love the skill, but I think Sugar Ray Leonard is respected because the true boxing people know that when it came down to it, when he was under fire, he was like, okay, let's go, let's get it done, and that's easier said than done. I'm writing my book. I have a book called Iceman Diaries. I don't know if you heard about it, but that's what it's called. And in it, I talk in a way about how hard it is for a fighter to dig down. Like you would think a fighter is fighting and he just digs down. He's got to dig down. He's losing, and he's got to dig down. And that's harder. I've had fights where I knew, and I said to myself, I got to dig down. I got to dig down like Sugar Ray Leonard did against Tommy Hearns in the 14th round. I got to dig down. I got to pull the victory out of me. And you dig down, and you realize in those moments how special what Ray did in the 14th round against Tommy Hearns was, because sometimes a mortal man digs down and he doesn't come up with the stuff that he needs. And Sugar Ray Leonard dug down on more than one occasion. You take the 9th round against Donnie Lalonde with a bigger guy when he had just gotten hurt against Donnie. And the fight was over 15, 20 seconds later because Sugar Ray, something snapped in him and he dug down and the fight was over. That's a special quality. And I think if Floyd had that, if he had that little extra, I think people would love him. People would idolize him. I think now they love him because he's the guy right now. But for his historical purposes, I think if he had that little bit of extra, I think he'd be in a much better place historically.
Yeah, it comes down to this: the people to get remembered are the people to take chances.
Right.
Leonard moves up. Sugar Ray Robinson dang near went all the way up, won the light heavyweight title.
Right, weighing 157. Ray, people realize Ray Robinson weighed, I think he weighed in at 59 or 61 or whatever he was. He didn't gain the weight. He fought a light heavyweight weighing, and they actually said when the fight was over, he was so dehydrated that he weighed, I forget exactly, maybe 152, something along those lines. He was very,
I remember
very
reading
light.
He lost 7 or 8 pounds during the fight.
Right, and there's a different mentality today, and again, it's hard to knock a guy who just made over $100 million in one night, but for a boxing purist, you still want to see those extra little things, and I always remember one of my idols. One of my friends actually was a friend of his personally in real life, I guess you'd say, is Archie Moore. And I remember, a lot of people don't know the story, but Archie Moore, he moved up and fought Marciano for the title, and Archie was older at the time, and Marciano was a killer. And before, I believe the last round that the fight was stopped, the doctor came, and the doctor actually wanted to stop the fight in the corner. And Archie told him, and I believe the words were, he said, I'm a champion too, let me go out like one. And what he meant was, don't stop it in the corner, let me go down fighting. And he went out and he fought and he got knocked out. And that's how he chose to go out. That's what people respect about him. Where now you could actually see guys like the titles don't mean anything. It's almost funny to me when a guy talks about the title. I'm like, man, you guys, people give up titles every day in boxing. They relinquish them. They give them up. Guys back in the day, they didn't generally give up the titles. They worked so hard to get them, and I always remember Archie Moore saying that, I'm a champion too. You got to let me go out like one. And I don't think that ideology is really prevalent. It's not common today.
Not even in society itself.
Right. And you know why? And I'll tell you why. One reason why. Because they know. A guy knows that if he's a champion and he's knocked out, it's okay because he's going to get a shot at a different title in his next fight. He's not even going to have to wait to do a tune-up. He's going to get a fight. His promoter is going to get him a fight instead of WBC, he'll just fight for the WBA title. It happens all the time, and where back then those guys knew I have to fight for the title to the death here, because I got to get another shot. If I ever get one, it might not be for a year and a half, 2 years. Those guys got back in line, and nowadays the top is reserved for a group of fighters promoted by certain people and managed by certain people, and they just get recycled. They just fight for the title again, and they know that they don't worry about losing a title because they know they're going to get another chance at it. Where you get most fighters that aren't connected, they have to fight just for the opportunity to get one title shot, and and they know that they're probably not going to get another one. So it's the politics of the game, I think, has trickled down and taken the hunger from the majority of the fighters. I think fighters in this era grow up knowing that if they're hooked up with the right promoter, that they really don't have to worry about getting opportunities. Where back in the day, opportunities were literally, you had to fight for the opportunity and the chance. And most of the guys never got chances. There's so many guys out there that never even got to fight for the title. They just didn't make it.
Yeah. Real quick, we've got a caller. It's not the one I was expecting. Kelly told me that he is running late and may not be able to call in, but he still told me to tell you he could take you. But but I got a caller online. Caller, state your name. What's your question for John Scully?
Hey, Mike. Hey, John. It's Dave. It's Dave from Massachusetts. Glad to be on, and I just have to say, first of all, that I've really enjoyed the first 20 minutes of this discussion, and it reminds me, I started following boxing as well in the late 70s and early 80s, and it really brought back some memories. And I guess my question for John is Floyd versus the great lightweights and welterweights of the late 70s, early 80s, say Duran, Aaron Pryor, Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Pepino Cuevas. How would he have fared?
Well, I'll say this much. I've always thought, and I'm adamant about this, I don't believe that Floyd Mayweather is a match for Tommy Hearns at welterweight. A prime Tommy Hearns, talking 1981. I believe that Tommy Hearns, just style-wise and mentality-wise, power-wise, strength-wise, everything combined, and just knowing the way Floyd, for example, the way Floyd reacts to strong punchers, the way he reacts to the strong jab, to the height, I think Tommy Hearns, surprisingly to a lot of people, I think Tommy Hearns convincingly beats Floyd Mayweather just because of his tools and his mentality. One thing that Floyd, I think, has on everyone, if you watch all of his fights, literally all of his fights, no one goes for broke against him. And when they do, they get countered and they get frustrated and they stop. They give it a shot maybe, but they give up on it. Tommy Hearns was not dictates the fight. When you have a Floyd Mayweather fight, Floyd, just from the first bell, in charge. Tommy Hearns would not allow that. I do believe that. And I'm not a betting man, but if I had, X amount of dollars, bet on that fight, I put every penny on Tommy Hearns. I truly believe that the style and the mentality and the power would be all wrong for Floyd Mayweather.
What do you think about Aaron Pryor?
The problem, I think the problem is that Aaron was so aggressive that I think he might have opened himself up a little bit too much against Floyd. Floyd is a sharp counterpuncher. He's very smart, and Floyd is the type of guy. See, with Tommy, he would have no choice. He'd have to react to Tommy's jabs and right hands. I guess it would be unavoidable. But with Aaron's not a big guy. Aaron's a shorter guy. He doesn't really have a lot of range, and I think he'd open himself up, and I think Floyd would find the openings. A very good fight, and no kind of whitewash or anything. But I think Floyd would find the openings with Aaron much easier than he would with the other guys, and I think he'd have more success with Aaron. I think Aaron is a great fighter, but against a slippery guy like Floyd, who could counter, I think he'd run into some problems, much more than Tommy would.
All right, you got any other questions, Dave?
No, and I can't disagree with anything else I heard there.
What part of Massachusetts are you from?
I am from the North Shore, 30 minutes north of Boston.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I boxed in Boston many times. Actually, back in the 80s, I used to spar with Kenny Butler. I don't know if you remember Kenny Butler, the punching post man from Hyde Park. We used to spar at a gym up in, I forget the name of the gym. I actually never even got the name of the gym, but there was a gym in South Boston on Massachusetts Avenue that we used to spar at quite a bit.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I used to be up there quite a bit. Actually, I sparred at the South Boston boxing gym a couple of years ago with some of the amateurs that were up there. I have a pretty deep history up in the Boston area.
Yeah. You're from Connecticut, right?
Right. Yep.
So we're not too far down the road from each other.
Oh, yeah. We're New England neighbors for sure.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Dave, do you want me to keep you on the line so you can listen to the show that way?
Sure, sounds good.
All right. If you think anything else to ask, just tweet me, Facebook me, whatever. We'll get you back on to ask a question.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Dave. So my question is this. I watched you fight Michael Nunn for, I think it was the WBO light heavyweight title. Were the judges actually watching the fight with their eyes open?
No, they were not.
Because I knew it was a unanimous decision, and I watched it again today, and they give the decision, and Harold Letterman had it like 118 to 109.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, to be honest with you. It was kind of weird. If you watch the fight, you see when they announced the decision, when they announced the first one, I literally, I'm not going to say laugh, but you could see me kind of chuckle and kind of like I submitted. I was like, well, they got me. What are they going to do? And not that I won. Maybe I won by a little bit. It was a good fight, but to have those scores was really a kick in the face. I think one of the worst decisions, not necessarily in the winner, but one of the worst scoring of a fight. It's almost as if I didn't even show up. And they gave me no credit. And it is what it is. But one thing was that the fight was basically promoted by Bob Arum, who was Michael's promoter, and they were setting Michael up to fight Roy Jones at the time. Michael was the number one contender, so obviously it wasn't in the cards. They certainly weren't hoping I was going to win. And I remember a friend of mine in James Toney's camp. I remember him saying to me after the fight, he goes, you should have seen Bob Arum's face around the 8th round. Like he was really worried, and they just kept going on and on about how Bob Arum looked like sick almost, because that fight with Roy was going to generate money, and it was a prestigious fight and at the time. So I'm not saying there was any funny business or whatever, but sometimes I'll say this much. Sometimes when you see a bad decision in boxing, people immediately claim corruption. And I'm not going to say that. Like, I'm not going to say fights are necessarily corrupt. I'm going to say that going in consciously or subconsciously, a judge has an idea. Everybody has an idea of who they want to win and who's supposed to win and who the promoter would like to win. So knowing that a human being is subconsciously influenced, and it's kind of like if I'm boxing, if say at the time if Roy Jones hit Michael Nunn with some of the shots I hit him with, they would say, oh yeah, Roy caught him, hey, that's we figured that. But when I catch him, it's almost like that was a lucky shot, or he didn't, it was a fluke, or Michael let him do it, something bizarre.
Yeah.
It's almost like you don't get the same credit for doing the exact same thing that a much more respected guy or a well-known guy did, and and it's kind of like Roy Jones. People say Roy Jones wasn't a good technical fighter, and I disagree. I think he had great technique, but it was overshadowed by his slickness and his speed. And I'll give you an example. If Mike McCallum, a brilliant technician, if Mike McCallum throws a double jab, right hand, double left hook, and then steps to the side, people will say, what a brilliant tactical combination, what a brilliant technical fighter. If Roy Jones does the same exact thing, they'll say, he's just a natural. This guy's a natural. Just what athletic ability he has. But he did the same thing Mike McCallum did. It's just they label it different because the perception is that McCallum's a great technical fighter and Roy Jones relies on his athleticism. But he did the same thing Mike did. He just does it with a little bit more speed and flair. So he doesn't get the credit for being a tactician that he probably should. And I think with me, I'm landing, like I actually outlanded Michael on the punch stats. They actually had me landing more punches, and I certainly landed at a much, much, much higher percentage. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that I landed at the highest percentage than anyone ever, not James Toney, none of them. Nobody landed as high of a connector. I believe it was 54% that I landed against him, which nobody's done. And I think that they didn't give me credit because they maybe thought that, their eyes fooled them a little bit, that they didn't expect that from me. So it is what it is. Perception, I take boxing judging with a little bit of a grain of salt, only because I realize that the judges are human and there's perception involved, there's emotions, there's influence. You could be at a fight and you're paying attention to the fight and you see a right hand thrown and you didn't know if it landed, but you hear all the people behind you screaming. So you figure, well, I guess it landed. The 20 guys behind me were all screaming. It sounded like it landed. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But you're just going off of what their vibe in the front row gave you. So it's sometimes I think that judges should be in a soundproof booth at ringside, so that they can only see, that they can't hear anything. And I think it would change some of the scoring that we've seen if they didn't have the influence of a guy literally 15 feet behind him acting like the guy in the blue corner is killing the guy in the red corner, when otherwise they wouldn't have thought that, only because the guy in the second row apparently believes it. So I think there's a lot of human emotion and perception involved in judging that can get clouded in there, with the best of them.
Yeah, and you brought up Roy Jones. I think you sparred with Roy Jones, didn't you?
Oh, many times, yeah.
Okay, and I think the perception, I think Roy Jones is one fighter that by hanging on too long, a lot of people have kind of forgotten how great he was. I mean, what was it like to be in the same ring with Roy Jones? I think he was one of the greatest fighters of all time. Oh,
for sure. I'm a person, I look at it like this. If you're one of the greatest fighters of all time, in January of 1998, you're one of the greatest fighters of all time. Today, January 5th, 1998, I'm going to say you're one of the greatest ever. Well, it doesn't matter what happens after January 5th, 1998. You get knocked out 30 times in a row. That doesn't change who you were on that day. The fact that Sugar Ray Robinson ended up losing 19 fights as a professional has not altered the fact that most people believe he was the best fighter ever. And I think Roy's getting a bad rap because of the way his career has ended over the last, and you look at it, he's literally went 10 years, 11 years after, which is pretty incredible. On his best day, I mean, you can say what you want about Roy Jones, but on his best day at 168 pounds, who's going to beat him? Show me a guy who you could say this guy will do that, he'll do this, he'll do that. I go, yeah, but could he beat him? Could he beat Roy? I don't think so. I mean, Roy Jones, he could do stuff wrong, he could do it right. You can hate him, you can love him, whatever you feel, but can someone at their best beat him? I don't think so. That's my feeling. I don't think so.
All right, I was going to get your opinion on a few fights that are coming up. Chris Algieri and Amir Khan.
I think Algieri is better than he gets credit for because of the loss to Pacquiao, where he was dropped a few times and et cetera. But I think stylistically he's a problem when he wants to move, and because he wasn't successful with Pacquiao, I think people give him a bad rap. But it's Pacquiao is still Pacquiao. But by the same token, Amir Khan is very tall for his weight. He uses his height very well. He's got a very good jab, and I believe he's a very stiff puncher. I I think Algieri was picked for a reason because he's going to put up a good fight and give a stylistic problem, but I don't think he's got the power to really, threaten Khan.
Now they're trying to set up Amir Khan and Floyd Mayweather. Do you think that Khan would pose a problem to Mayweather?
I think he would for parts of the fight. I think he would, but Floyd, at his age and everything, Floyd is just like every fight. When they ask me to pick the fight, I get on some panels and they ask. I'm one of the people they ask, who do you think's going to win? And I've always said, Floyd Mayweather. You love him, hate him, whatever you think about him. He's done nothing in any of his fights to give me any reason to pick against him. He's been so consistent for his entire career. You're talking 18 years. This guy's been consistent the entire 18 years. And he's looked good. And he looked just as good last fight as he has in any fight 12, 15 years ago. So I don't see anything to suggest that Amir Khan would beat him. I think you give him a tough fight. I think he could be a problem. But in terms of actually coming away with a victory over the man, I wouldn't think so.
Okay, what's your thoughts on the Broner Porter fight?
I like that fight, and I really like Porter. I like Sean personally as a man. I really like him. I think he's a very good fighder. I can't say I'm a fan of Broner just because of his.
I've met him a couple times, and I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I don't get the impression. I don't know. I've been around him. I've never had the urge to say hello. And who knows? He may be the greatest guy. I've met Floyd Mayweather several times, and I can tell you this, that I believe, and from what I've heard and from what I've seen with my own eyes, and even from conversing him with Floyd online a few times, I believe a lot of that is an act. I believe Floyd is actually a pretty decent guy. I've heard that from many other people who know him much better than I do. But from my dealings with him, and I've heard, I have a friend of mine who sparred with Broner, and he said, "Oh no, he's pretty cool. He's a pretty cool guy, And so who knows? But I can only go by my perception. And when he did that video, and I think he was in like a Burger King bathroom or something, and he's using the bathroom. Really, that's pretty ignorant. I don't. If you do that, it doesn't really matter to me how nice you are in private, because that kind of image. It's pretty ignorant. That's just pretty stupid. It is what it is. That's not my champion. I'm looking at the historic Sugar Ray Robinsons. Those guys. They weren't perfect, but champions. That's not a champion. Doing a video where you're in the bathroom in the Burger King and you're on the toilet. That's what do you say to that? How do you respect that? And how do you have your kid? Say I have a 12-year-old kid who wants to be a fighter. How do I point him in that direction and say, this is what a champion does? I'm not really interested in that too much. But I can't take away his skill based on the fact of what I think of him personally or what my perception is. I think he's a problem, and I think when he's on his game, he's a difficult guy. But I like him to lose this fight. I believe that his opponent is very strong and probably an underrated technician, and I think I'm going to go with Sean.
Yeah, I agree completely on that one. And that's one where I think my heart and my head are going the same way. My last one for you would be Gennady Golovkin. I'm amazed that people, it's like the more successful some people are, they hate on them, and it's unbelievable. Like I don't know. Let's be real. I don't know if it's because he's white or if he's European. I don't know what. I don't know if it's because he doesn't talk trash. I don't know. But I don't see what some of these critics are seeing. This guy, man, he's a record machine. He's a very consistent. Consistency is a very important and lost facet of boxing. A lot of top fighters today are very, very inconsistent, and Triple G is not one of them. He's one of the most consistent guys anywhere. Is digging to the body the way he does, the way he stays with the plan. When that guy makes a plan, you can be assured.
if he tells you he's going to write that 6-page report by 3 o'clock, count on it. When you get back at 3 o'clock, that report's going to be done. That's his MO. Like, he's getting it done, and he's going to die trying. I like him a lot. I don't know what people see when they think he's overrated.
I was talking to Kelly Pavlik earlier, and he thinks he's overrated. So too bad he didn't call in. We could have had that argument, because to me, he is like the guys like Sugar Ray Robinson. I mean, he fights every 3 months.
I mean, look, people don't want to believe, what they see, and I think people get messed up because sometimes they tout a guy as the next superstar, and he turns out to be a dud, or he fails, and so they don't want to be fooled, and maybe they think everybody that's a new star is just going to be a flash in the pan. But and I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but for right now, I mean, that guy, there's nobody, none of those big names are rushing in to fight him. They're not, Cotto, by any means, Cotto and Triple G should be fighting, should be the next fight. The real people don't even mention that fight. Cotto's people, they want to forget that, apparently, they want to forget that Triple G even exists. They wish that he would get hit by a bus. I mean, that's the way it looks like. They don't even, the champion, Cotto's, I guess he's a lineal champion. He's a WBC champion. He doesn't even mention the guy's name, whereas that's one thing you could say about the earlier era. Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Wolf Benitez, they're mentioning your name. Your name's coming up. Iron Barkley. You think Iron Barkley wouldn't fight Triple G? Iron Barkley would be
I'm pretty sure
first in line. He'd be first in line. But Cotto, these guys don't even want to acknowledge this guy's alive. And they can, you can say, oh, he's, the quickest way to divert attention is to say, oh, he's overrated, he's this and that. Listen, if he's overrated, then he's easy pickings, dude. Let's jump on him and get the money, But it's funny to me when guys overrated, they don't want to fight him. It's like, why don't you want to fight him? I mean, if he's that simple, just fight him and take the easy money. But people know better. This is a business we're in, boxing. Professional boxing is a business. People know. When they sit in the back room, you know what they say? They say, listen, Miguel, let's relax here. This dude's a killing machine. Let's take a break. Let's go after Canelo. Let's make the bigger money, or whatever the case may be. Let's leave this guy alone. He's like Mr. T in Rocky III. Let's avoid this guy. This guy's a wrecking machine. That's what Mickey said. I don't
think Cotto would stand much chance against Golovkin.
No, he could fight a great fight, and who knows, maybe he did. But the point is, they don't want to necessarily find out. They may think this and that, think this and the other thing about Golovkin, but they don't want to find out, and that tells you all you need to know. The silence is very deafening. People are not calling him out. They call other people out, and they always call the person out that makes them the most money. Everybody's calling Mayweather out, but they don't call Golovkin out. And that's indicative of something.
Yeah. But, hey, we're almost out of time. I really appreciate you calling in tonight. Anytime you want to come back on the show, we'll have you anytime. But I really appreciate you coming in tonight.
I appreciate you having me. It's been a lot of fun, actually. There's some really good conversation, and I appreciate you having me.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot, John.
All right, buddy. Talk to you next time. Thank you.
All right. Hey, guys, remember, Thursday night we've got Matt Blair, former 6-time Pro Bowler to Minnesota Vikings, played in 2 Super Bowls with the Vikings. He will be our football guest on Thursday night. And next Tuesday night we'll be back with another boxing show. I believe we're talking to Donnie Lalonde about getting him on to talk about his TKOO Foundation. He was a great guest 2 weeks ago. Can't wait to hear from him again. So we will talk to you guys Thursday night from Matt Blair. In the meantime, we'll see you on The Grueling Truth Thursday night at 11. Thanks.